Welcome to the March the 11th, 1997 pre-taping of It Happened in Grand Prairie. As we bring you the history of our city and some of the people that have caused this history to come into being. This is our history tape number 302, and we're very excited today. We're celebrating the 50th anniversary of a very special company here in Grand Prairie, Texas, that's been good to Grand Prairie, and we hope Grand Prairie has been good to it. And my very honored guest today is a very special young man in that I have been married to him for 52 plus years, and I'm just so pleased to welcome Mr. Vernon Jackson to the set, representing the Jackson Vending Company's anniversary and birthday. Welcome to the set, Mr. Jackson.
Thank you, Ruthie. Glad to be here.
Young man, it certainly is unusual for me to have you on the dais today with me asking the questions and doing the leading when it's always been the other way around in our business and just a lot of our life together. But today, in this celebration, I could think of no better way than to just bring you front and center today and let you look out into your camera, right over to your absolute center there, to Ruthie the robot over there, and talk to the people in Grand Prairie about your very exciting business, and tell us, first of all, since you were in another business when you went into this business, tell us just a little bit about the business you were in prior to vending.
Well, I was in the aircraft business. I worked for North American Aviation, in which I held a supervisory job. And the big thing during those days, for those of you that can remember that far back, was what are you going to do when the war is over? What kind of job we going to get? So I had decided that I would go into gumball vending business. I had a friend that I worked with out at the plant named Everett Graff, and we did become very good friends. And Everett had some experience in the gumball business prior to the war, and he actually is the person that sold me on to getting in the gumball vending business.
And was that approximately March 1947 that all of this came into being? You quit your job at the aircraft thing and decided you'd just go vending?
That was in the spring of 1947.
All right. Where did you buy your first route of vending machines, or did you get them here and put them out in Grand Prairie, or what happened?
I had a choice of either buying some vending machines on location in Kansas City, Kansas, or in the Jackson, Mississippi area. And after I had gone with Mr. Everett Graff to look at these routes, I decided on buying the route in Mississippi.
How many machines did you purchase to begin all of this illustrious career, Mr. Jackson?
We bought 170 1-cent master gumball vendors.
You drove all of the way to Mississippi to run vending machines, 170 vending machines with pennies in them, with ball gum, and what else?
Well, we had some Boston baked beans where the location would serve for 2 machines. We would put Boston beans in one of the machines and ball gum in the other one.
How often did you have to travel to Mississippi, and how long did you keep the 170?
We drove to Mississippi, or I did, and finally you went with me some, but in the beginning I drove to Vicksburg, Mississippi from 200 Myers Road. We were living in Grand Prairie, and I was driving over to Mississippi every 3 weeks. I'd drive over there, and it would take me about a week and a half or 10 days to run the route, and then I'd drive back from Mississippi. And I remember very well it taking 7 hours back during those times to drive to Vicksburg, Mississippi, just to get to my first machine.
How much money did you, here you are driving all of these many miles, did you make any money, sir?
Well, that was a big question, and really back in those days I did. I had quit a job, which I've already mentioned was a foreman's job in the aircraft business, and with a salary of $250 a month. And then whenever I went into penny gumball vending business, I would pick up $900, and back then half of it would be profit. So actually I made $450 in 10 days, which was good money back then.
Yes, all right. And your vending business then, how have you expanded any? You got that 170 machines, and then did you buy any more?
170 wasn't enough because I had an ambitious wife, and she didn't take real well to me working 10 days a month, and she felt like that I should work a few more days than that, so I ended up buying enough machines to make 300. Excuse me. I believe 170, that'd be 130 more machines.
All right, all right. And you kept those? Do you still have that 300 vending machines in Mississippi?
No, I run those 300 vending machines for 2 years over in Mississippi, and I decided I'd like to work a little closer to home, so I found a competitor vendor in Mississippi named Paul Thomas, and I sold these 300 machines to Paul Thomas.
Then what'd you do with your money?
Well, I sold them for $20 a piece, and I think 300 times 20 is $6,000, and that was a whole lot of money. And back then, and I remember Paul wanted to know if I'd take cash or if I wanted cash or a check, so I told him I'd just take cash, and he paid me in $20 bills, and I really thought I was rich.
Okay, so you came back to Grand Prairie, Texas, and were you still in the vending business, or did you go another direction?
Stayed in the vending business, and I spent that money that I thought I was rich with. I spent it for more gumball machines and put them out in Grand Prairie, Texas.
All right, to put them out in Grand Prairie, Texas, you must have had a lot of friends to be able to put these on locations, because when you own the machine, you have to put it on someone else's property. Who'd you know?
I knew a lot of people, and I became acquainted with a lot of people, and I did have a lot of friends, but I can still remember 2 or 3 old soreheads that wouldn't let me put them in.
All right, but
now, don't ask me who they were.
Well, tell me some of the real wonderful ones. I remember Mayor John Doherty let you put vending machines in his service station, and that was really uptown when the mayor let you put vending machines in.
That is correct. I was very pleased to put peanut and gum machines in Mayor Doherty's service station, and I would like to just say he was a tremendous friend, and I count him as one of my better friends in Grand Prairie. And also a fellow named Mark, that Myrick, that had a Wayne Myrick, that had an humble station in Grand Prairie. I put machines in his store, in his service station. Also, I want to mention John McGahey, who is now deceased, but John allowed me to put machines in his place, and I can just go on and on. There's 2 special people that I want to mention. I want to mention a fellow named Doc Carter, who was a great friend of mine then and still is, and Doc's still living, and I'm wish you good continued good health, Doc. And also a gentleman named, well, let me back up with Doc. Doc was the manager of a very important store in Grand Prairie that we called it Safeway store, and many people in Grand Prairie right now remembers Doc Carter because Doc called everybody by their first name when they walked in the store. Then there was a special person that also let us put machines in their stores, in his store. His name was Grady Jacobs. Grady's still living. He's in Grand Prairie, has a lot of friends.
What store did he have?
Grady run the A&P store. Some of the people that's old enough can remember the A&P stores. I think they have not been in the Grand Prairie area for about 40 years, but A&P was a good chain store, and the reason that I got to put these in their stores, I want to mention, was that we had an arrangement with the Lions Club in Grand Prairie at that time where they would make a percentage of what the machines taken in. We referred to them as a charity machine, and of course Grady and Doc both were great Lion Club members, and I want to just mention our honorable Lions Club president back in those days was Mr. Tom Milhorn, and there are some old heads in Grand Prairie now that I know remembers Mr. Tom Milhorn. He was a great believer in the Lions Club, and he also run a good real estate business along with a fellow named E.R. Avery. They were the two real estate people in Grand Prairie, and I guess I'd better go ahead and say G.H. Turner was also in the real estate business, because somebody will remember that. If
All
I don't
right,
say.
and were these still 1 cent vending machines that you had, Mr. Jackson?
At this time, they were 1 cent vending machines. I believe it was early 50s before we ever decided that we'd put a nickel slot on the machines.
All right, and so you just expanded around in this area, and finally, what was the biggest chain that you ever got while you were still by yourself running this business with just the help of those of us that were in the family?
I'd need to jump to 1957 to answer that question. In 1957, I took a trip over to Fort Worth at their district office. A gentleman named Mr. Curtis was district manager of the Safeway chain over there, and I told him that I had machines in their store over in Grand Prairie and how well they were doing. And he said, well, why don't we just put them in my stores over here and you pay me? And I asked him how many stores he had, and he said, I have 15. And that kind of scared me. That was a big chain for me back then. But anyway, we did put, in 1957, we put 3 machines on a stand in the Safeway stores, the 15 Safeway stores. At that time, 1 nickel one in the center and 2 penny ones on each side.
All right. And then the next step, did you go on and get all of the Safeways in Texas? And we have about 3 minutes left on our interview.
I'm so glad you asked, because I did go to the main office of Safeway in Dallas at that time. A gentleman named Mr. Harold Johnson looked at me when I walked in there with that gumball machine, and you'd have thought I had a bucket of rattlesnakes. He began to run backward and act like he wasn't too interested. And the more I talked to him, the more he said, I think I like them. So I ended up putting them in 170 Safeway stores in all of Texas.
All right.
And a little later on in 1964, we got to put the kiddie rides in all of their stores. So it was for several years that we had the kiddie rides and the gumball and novelty machines in all the Safeway stores in Texas.
Well, I know that you started out in a garage at the back of 202 Myers Road, and from that you've grown into what kind of a complex do you have down on MacArthur Boulevard? They've renamed our street, so tell us about your complex now.
I'm not sure how many square feet we have in our warehouses down at 200 Myers Road with MacArthur Boulevard. The city changed Myers Road to MacArthur Boulevard, and I'm just now getting used to that. But anyway, we have substantial footage of warehouses down there, and of course, since that time, we have a lot of help and a lot of additional chain stores, and we use this space now all for vending.
All right. Now, we're going into another segment of this show with your permission, since you've invited two guests to come and be with you today to kind of round out the history of this, because up until this Safeway time, you sort of ran this thing by yourself with a couple of route men like Louis Becker and W.D. Martin, who were two of your first route people, and Mr. Bill Taylor and some of the others. And with your permission, we're going to just wait a few minutes, and I'm going to let you bring your guests on, and we'll all three talk. Is that all right?
Fantastic.
All right, and we'll be right back. And as we continue our interview relating to the Jackson Vending's 50th anniversary, Mr. Jackson has two wonderful guests with him today. Mr. Jackson, I would like for you to welcome and introduce the young man on your immediate left, and tell us why you have chosen him as part of your company. Mr. Jackson.
Welcome, Dan Clemson. As we welcomed you, I believe it's 1972, to come with our company. We're just happy that you're with us today.
It's good to be here still.
All right. And on your immediate right, you have another young man that is making the third generation in this setup of Jackson Vending. Would you like to introduce him, Mr. Jackson?
This gentleman, Spencer Clemson. Spencer's my grandson, and I'm happy to introduce you, Spencer, and welcome to this interview.
Well, thank you for inviting me.
So Director of Operations, and isn't that wonderful, Mr. Jackson? Is he auditing your jobs? And we'll talk about that in a minute.
Yes, he is.
All right. Mr. Clemson, welcome to the set. Jackson Vending, since you came on board, has done lots of changing. But would you like to tell us a little bit about the expansion since you came into the business and purchased the business from Mr. Jackson and I, how you've expanded it into several other subsidiaries, and just tell us a little bit about what's happening to Jackson Vending as a whole right now.
Jackson Vending as a whole since 1985. I think it's been a remarkable time. Thinking back to a situation when I left LTV to join a family business with a father-in-law that had a pretty notorious reputation as being a pretty hard-nosed businessman, and not knowing how we would mix that with family. It was a very interesting time there for a number of years, but we've been able to make it work for a long time, and then back in 1985, it turned out that we were able to make arrangements to purchase the business so that we would know that the business would continue on. And since then we have grown quite a bit through internal growth and acquisitions, and right now we currently service approximately 13 states across the southern part of the United States, from California to Florida. But we've also done some other diversification into some related industries that we think will also pay off for us in the long run. We have just finished our last year, which was our second best year ever since we've been in business, and we're all very excited about that and really looking forward to this year.
And you have an operation, I believe, in Aguascalientes, Mexico, Mr. Clemson.
Yes, we started about 4 years ago. We started a company in Mexico, and we've had to struggle through the NAFTA and the peso devaluations, but we're hanging in there, and we've been able to be successful and grow down there also. We're excited about that.
How do you compare the vending business? When you first went into this business, did you think that you were going to have lots of fun? Did you know it's going to be so much work, Mr. Clemson?
I was young and ignorant, and that helps a lot.
Yeah.
And back then it was still mostly pennies. Most of what we collected were still pennies back then, and we've gone through a lot of changes. Fought battles with gasoline shortages and sugar shortages, and many challenges that you really wouldn't think that you'd have to deal with a gumball machine operation. We've done a lot of computerization and networking and all those things that most of the modern day companies do, but we're still selling ball gum and trying to make a living off of that.
All right. I must ask you this in the presence of Mr. Jackson. I know he's a tough taskmaster. Have you got along with him all of these years? That's been a ball of wax, hasn't it?
Oh, he's in a tough situation because
Yes.
he still likes his daughter a lot, and so that's helped. I'm sure that's helped temper. But one of the things that Vernon's also known for, aside from being a tough businessman, he's always been a fair businessman, and that goes a long way, regardless of the situation.
Do you hope to continue developing the vending business and staying there for a while on MacArthur Boulevard in Grand Prairie, Texas, a good tax base for us?
I hope so. I really do. We've gone through so many changes in the last few years, and the business has spread out substantially. But still, we want to keep our base here. We have such good base of support, good people here. Most of the people that are employed or our place live in Grand Prairie, and we're pretty proud of our little part of Texas that we stay in.
All right. Going to get back with you in a minute if time will permit, but now let's go to Spencer Clemson. Spencer Clemson, being the third generation person in this, what is it like for you to come into the business a couple of years ago? You've worked in every area of the business. You've run vending machines, you've worked out in the parts departments, you've worked in shipping, you've worked in sales, and now you're a director of operations. How do you get along with your grandfather in this business, and how do you relate to your dad, having both of these fellas to work with?
Well, with Mr. Jackson, I just try to stay out of his way and keep up with him because he's still a real good guy to watch and hard to keep up with at his age. Some people don't believe that, but he's pretty tough to keep up with. And the vending business is the only thing I've really grown up around, and I've swept the floors and done every aspect of it. And it's really the only thing I've thought about doing. So I'm just real excited to get the chance this last year.
Well, do you work for Mr. Jackson, or is Mr. Clemson the big boss and both of you all work for him?
We try to keep the big boss happy, and if the big boss is happy, everybody else is happy.
All right, that's great. All right, Mr. Jackson, now you're sitting between the two that have talked so nicely about you. Do you have anything else to say on the last few minutes of this interview?
They've been so nice, it's a little difficult for me to say anything because I didn't realize that exactly what they were going to say, of course, before today, but they're great people. I've enjoyed working with Dan, and I'm certainly enjoying working with Spencer now, and I've been blessed tremendously just to be able to work with both of them and tell them what I know. The only bad thing about it, I tell them what I know, and along with what they know more than I do, and it does make it tough.
But isn't that nice that you've gotten to that point?
Yes, it is.
Where you could even admit that.
Yes.
And Mr. Jackson, since you are 75 years old plus, do you plan to keep on working in the vending business if Dan will continue to hire us?
I have an idea on Friday, as long as my paycheck comes in, I'll probably try to come in a few hours a day just to kind of feel like I'm partially earning my paycheck. No, I enjoy the business a lot, and I wouldn't know what to do if I wasn't working.
All right. Dan Clemson, we want to get back to you. Give us a forecast of how do you think the vending business is going in the next few years, especially when we've heard the stories about the computer cards for vending machines instead of coins, and changing all of the different changes that be made in the monetary system?
We really don't know. We hope that people always have some kind of a coin to fit in the machines. Either they will have to get a gumball machine that'll plug into the wall that'll take credit cards, I guess. But as far as I know, most all of the basic civilizations around the world still have some kind of coin that the people like to carry in their pocket, and we still offer a treat that Mama can get for the kids when they go in the store. So we don't take up a lot of space, and we have been able to make a little money for the merchants that let us put machines in.
Since you have started out with the 1-cent master machine in the history of this company, do you have many different innovations now? I see these giant gumball machines around town. I see the one that play music and do little tricks with the ball gum before it delivers it. What are you going for next?
We've been a little innovative in that area. We helped to market the giant gumball machine nationally, really set that whole program up and became the standard for that around the country, even exporting to other countries, to Japan and South America and Europe, right out of Grand Prairie. And the new machines that are coming around, we're very involved in those. Anything that we can do, that we can afford to do, that'll be profitable and promote our products, we're going to try to be involved in.
Well, I was so proud of you and Mr. Jackson. This last week, you received a very special award, both of you all, from the Kent Waltrip Paralysis Foundation, because your company had helped them to generate $500,000 for their charity. You gonna keep on doing good stuff like that?
Yes, we have. We've been able to do that for 10 years. And that's the total contribution over those 10 years. It's a program similar to what Mr. Jackson started with in the early beginning, where the merchants actually donate their commissions to the National Paralysis Foundation, and we forward that money on to help that cause. And we've recently started a program with the David Nicholas Foundation, which is an organ donor awareness foundation that's based here in Grand Prairie by Rodney DeBon and his family, who happened to require a heart transplant 3 years ago.
I want to thank you three gentlemen very much for helping us salute Jackson Vending Supply, that is now really expanded into product sales, charity service, store service, and whatever else, all of the companies that you have, Mr. Clemson. I want to thank you, Mr. Jackson, for inviting these two gentlemen to share your interview today, and congratulations on the 50th anniversary of your company.
Thank you, Ruthie. We're just real pleased to be here and serve the Grand Prairie area for 50 years. And I will reluctantly say we're happy to pay taxes in the city here all these years.
Wonderful.
Which is pretty substantial.
Thank you very much for that last reminder. And this is Ruthie Jackson reminding you that history is as we live and do.